Hi, I've had a couple questions from folks about how to enter designated supports and accommodations into TIDE for students. So here's a quick tutorial for those of you that need an update or haven't had an opportunity to do this in the past. So where you're going to start, of course, is you're going to log into the OSAS portal, and then you're going to go to TIDE. And then once you're in TIDE, on the preparing for testing side, you want to select student information, view, edit, export student test settings and tools. And then you're going to select your school, or you can select all. And then you want to put in the student's SSID here in this field. What you're essentially doing here is you're searching for the student so that you can get to their specific record. So I'm just going to use a temp ID that I had created in the past and paste it into that SSID field. Of course, if you need to enter these for the screener, you would enter their temp ID in that field instead of an SSID. But for all the rest of the assessments, you would enter their SSID. So once you've done that, or you can search by student name, you can select their enrolled grade. You can even plug in the Synergy ID over here in this field if you have that. So there's a number of ways to get to that information. So once you've entered SSID is the easiest, just hit the search button, and then it'll say your search returned one result. It should just say one result for the student that you were looking up. So you want to view results. And then you get this here, which basically tells you everything that student has in place currently. But to get to the screen where the supports are, you need to click the little pencil here on the left. On the top of this screen is all the students' demographic information. Next thing down is the test access, which has your block subjects that we've talked about in another tutorial. And then down below, you've got embedded designated supports, and then below that, embedded accommodations. And you can see for each of these, they're divided up by the particular test. So here's the ELA CAT. Now, you know, this year we don't have any performance tasks, but it's still on this screen. So you'll just ignore the PT for any of these students. But you are going, if you're going to enter a support for some Smarter Balanced, it's going to be the ELA or Math CAT, or for science, you're going to want to enter that. So the way you scroll back and forth is you can either use this left and right scroll arrow, or you can just scroll using the scroll bar on the bottom of your screen. So the way that you enter supports, let's say for this student, let's say this student had print on request for the ELA CAT. So you would go to ELA CAT here, and then you would look down to print on request, and you do that drop down, and you would select what the print on request is. And that's all of the information about what's allowed for certain tests is all in the Oregon Accessibility Manual and on the designated supports and accommodation sheets that I've provided to you and which are accessible on the state assessment website. So let's say that was under designated supports, so you have items, you just select items for that, or let's say their print size needed to be increased, you could just select that. So whatever it is, whatever support you need to add that's embedded, you would add it here. Once you're finished adding supports, you need to save this. So you have to scroll all the way to the bottom and hit the save button right here. If you don't hit this save button, if you just go up here in the upper right hand corner and X out at this point, those changes will not be saved. So that's how you add embedded designated supports and accommodations. One note on accommodations, if you have a student who has non-embedded accommodations, this is not designated supports, this is per an IEP or a 504, and they have an accommodation that is non-embedded, in other words, it's not integrated to the test itself, it's external to the test, you still have to go in here and turn on the accommodation flag, and that's right here. It's this first line under embedded accommodations. So you would go there and you would only select one or more for those non-embedded accommodations. So that's the only caveat to embedded or not. You must, if they're embedded, you must enter them here. If they're non-embedded, there's nothing to enter here except when it's a non-embedded accommodation, you do need to turn on the accommodation flag. Once you're done, just hit save. And then it'll tell you that your students' edits have been saved. And you can hit continue and go on from there. Then anything, if you look at this now, I can slide this over and I can see in this column here that I turned on for print on request, ELA items, print size, I turned on 2.5 times. And then under the accommodation flag, you can see that I've got one or more there. So if you need to go back and look up any of these students, you just can go back, search them out, look at the screen, and it'll tell you what's been entered and what has not been entered so far. So that does it for how to enter designated supports and accommodations that are embedded, plus how to turn on accommodations flag for non-embedded accommodations.